Okay, this is a combat build for a Hunter Ranger, just known as the Ranger, I guess, for Mod 16 for Neverwinter. There are a few different ways to play each character, and I believe this is the one that, with my playstyle, does the most damage. There are a few things that add up to this, and we'll get into it as we talk about the different aspects of it. Um, this is more of an in-game type of build and not just something that you would be having on your character easily. This is well built up. He's 23, 359k, level 80 now. And he has just about everything best in slot, at least what I feel is for this build. Now, he is still wearing the feared Kurno of the bear for the advantage that you get off your chest piece. And if you'll look, it says Swordsman's perk. Melee's powers do 3% more damage. There's also a ring that does the same thing, and in doing so, I was able to take off the boots. A few choices of boots here, but this one, Contender's Might, gives just about the best stats that I could get, and then it says at the start of combat, my power is increased by 1500 for 10 seconds, and then I've put a power modification rune upon it. And then arms also, while I would like to have the Fearbringers because it'll give me extra in my it is a different perk, and so you do get a different perk off of it. I didn't get them on this character, but it would give me for just my at-wills alone, and then another perk for your encounter damages, and it says that it takes away from what your daily would do, but our daily is done different for a Hunter Ranger, and it almost seems like that may be the best in slot. Although this one here, this build that I'm showing you, is really for a dungeon mob, basically, and taking care of mobs in short, uh, easy bursts, if you will. And in doing so, it's probably the perk of damage that you could get off of them. I'm using these weathered bracers of the successor. It gives you Call of the Mountain. At the start of combat, you'll call forth creatures of the Undermountain. They're the little boogly creatures that look like froggish creatures and things like that, and they supposedly help you out. They don't do so much, but it does show you that the perk happened. Although up in your bar it still shows a white cube where it is, and it doesn't actually show you what that perk is supposed to look like, or that buff is supposed to look like. But it tells you that it increases my power by 15% for 15 seconds, but it has a 60-second cooldown. So for 3 out of 4 times, for one quarter of the time, I am buffed like this. But also it resets whenever you go out of combat and back into combat, and has a minute to where it'll do it. So it doesn't do it necessarily mob, but it'll do it in one large mob, or you could get 2 easily out of this, of these smaller mobs that we run through. I'm not going into so much detail there, but it gives you this extra power. Now, looking at my stats, also, I'm using the Protege's Hood here that gives you Undermountain Hunter 5% damage in the Undermountain. Now, if I wasn't doing this, I'd be using Mermaid's Soup Bowl, which gives you Executioner's Fury, where when you kill an enemy, your damage increased for 5% for 5 seconds. But this would be out of Undermountain. It's better to get the 5% no matter what goes on while you're in Undermountain, of course. And so that's pretty much it. I'm wearing the Alabaster set at this point, but I really debate on whether or not the Burnished set is better. I have both of them. I couldn't get my Alabaster set, so I actually, from doing the Major Lom dungeon, got the Burnished set and was running off of it, and I ran myself like a glass cannon, expecting to get hurt because its perk is if I ever take damage or get healed 15%, armour in one single bout, that perks up my damage to 5%. So that's where you get your damage bonus. This one is set as perk for however many people that you are fighting at the time that you go. So if you start into battle against one person, it does do just one. But if you start into battle with 2 or 3 or 4 and it builds up and everything like that, most people believe this is probably the best that's in the dungeon, but it kind of depends. And I'm really flip-flopped on which. If you're in a better group, it seems like you don't take as much damage as often, and so this one would probably be the definite better one. But sometimes you are taking some damage and getting that perk that goes up, and so Burnish could be better. In fact, the new dungeon that's coming after this, the trial, it could probably be best in slot for that, along with the Watcher set that they also have. I'm running the Demogorgon set at this point. There is no other better set than that, and running with its perk that's on it. I have the wheel currently on here up top, but I can switch it out for the Soulsight Crystal, and it'll give you 25% damage to attacks constant. But what I'm also working on is 2 different artifacts here um, to use in place of that, because they do seem to do a lot better. The Wyvern Venom coated knives, so it does the damage, but then it also enemies take 5% more damage and is weakened during the time. And of course, this is a group party buff, and this is the Decanter of Tropal Essence. Seems to be more of a just for you as per se, but it gives you a Tropal Essence, and then per second as you do damage, it'll build up to a total of 10 times, but it only lasts 14 seconds here whenever you get it all the way built up. I believe it's 20 seconds maximum, but then it can be stretched by up to a total of 10 times, so 10 more seconds, and you get 30 seconds out of it. And this is the one that you would probably use upon bosses or something along that range, although these firing knives seem to stack somewhat, and just like we used to use the lantern to burn things up in the old days, people use it nowadays to do that. Again, here's the Burnish set, and it's longbow. It gives the same damage and everything, it's just the way that it works along with it. So looking at my stats now, that's an overview of the character itself, and really I'm kind of keeping the wheel in here because it does give me 1,000 more power, and power is everything in this mod. I have Trobriand's ring just ready to flip over, so it's right at 3,000, 2780, and have it there. But the stats that I've built up, we look at here, all I could pull was 29 out of my strength onto it, and they've made it to where you can't re-roll your character stats out like you used to get the best perk in the category that you want. And that displeased a lot of people, but we'll get beyond that. This one was able to get a large amount of strength going on. He used to be Dex, of course, and we used the Dex belt and so on, and the Companion's belt out of the work. So I tried to get as much damage bonus out of strength as I could. I did put 2 points into Dex, giving me a little more movement speed, but critical severity, which makes your crits hit harder. But mainly all my points are put in Companion, influence, and recharge speed. And I'm playing with the idea of putting 1 or 2 more and making it just the recharge speed into it. I don't have any extra points that I'm putting into other ones, but it does give me decent numbers. I started with a decent con and so on like that, right? So anyhow, in doing so, you build up, and in this new mod, 68,000 is the number to overcome as far as maximum amount of critical that you could have, maximum amount of defense that you have, critical avoidance, accuracy, deflect, combat advantage, and power go over and above that. Combat advantage does extra damage whenever you are doing combat advantage. There's certain pies around the shape, and not necessarily just on behind, but I get a perk for fighting people from behind. I'll show you that in a moment. So this combat advantage does damage whenever you are at that certain range. Power is giving it overall and adds to the combat advantage. I'd like to get that up over 1,000. It's on here, and so recharge speed 8.5%, and that's about as maximum as you can get it. Companion influence will get all the way up to about 64 if I do max out my other stat in charisma, but tit for tat, if you will. I like to play with the edge of other things. I've got a decent enhanced movement speed, and that helps me a lot. And incoming healing I have going on in a small amount. I'll show you in my companions shortly. And of course, you can get one of the new rune stones too, and change out one of your reds, your rune stones that you have in utility spots. That'll give you even more enhanced healing and so on. Critical severity is standing up at 115% normal. Magical boost doesn't really come into effect for me like it would on a Scourge Warlock and so on, but my physical damage boost is about 7.3. I wish I could get up that up higher. I think the maximum you can get it about is 8.5. Someone could correct me if I'm wrong. But whenever you have your character like that, this is just me as naked as can be. But I'm going to take one of my invocation blessings. This gives a slight boost to my numbers and acts like I just came out of the fire. And so I'm fresh, I guess you'd say. Here we get a potion of power. Rank 6s just give you 1,000. And I can take one of those and get even higher. But they're all the way up to rank 9 now. 9 I think gives you 2,500, and it also doesn't go away if you die. All these other potions go away if you die. Watermelon sorbet. Watermelon sorbet is extremely important in this mod here because power being so effective, it gives you a percentage. And whenever you get your power up to way up to where I am now, you can see in the tooltip there, my power goes up by 10,728, my accuracy by 900, and it'll last me 1,800 seconds. You can only have one of these going on at one time, so I eat each one of those, right? And you could put a scroll of power onto, this is 560 more power, and I can show you just maxed out for a dungeon. Another effect that you could do is get elixirs of fate, and it gives you an increased strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, charisma by 1, and this adds to your whole rotation speed and things like that that you can get. Something that you usually don't always run with. Anyhow, so now that leaves me with my standing being at 188,000 power. My armor penetration is over 68. Defense is 67, 927. So it's 68. Critical strike is way over at 78, but that's going to come into play later. Critical avoidance is down a little bit at only 52. Accuracy is well, though deflect is low a little bit. My combat advantage is 92,000. Awareness is 46. So my deflect, critical avoidances and stuff is down a little bit. But that was okay to be a glass cannon in that way because I had the perk on my weapon that says whenever I take a little bit of damage, I need a healer, but whenever I take a little bit of damage, it perks me up. So I'm supposed to run in and take a little crap, kind of, almost tanking it, if you will. A little bit different than, someone that would be ranged or whatever. And this is in no way, shape, or form a ranged type of build. I don't know why, but it's still showing where my strength has only gone to 29, and it should be at 30 right now. Let's see if I get my power buff. Huh, that's strange because I did take a crown and everything, and it should be up at 30. There it is. And so now my numbers go up just slightly different. Funny, lagging a little bit today. Okay, so now that I've gone into that far, I'll go into rotations a little bit and then talk about my powers and things and whatever I'm using. Well, for one thing, the companion is fairly important in this module. Whereas most people were doing very similar to the same thing before. Now we're going to have people doing the same thing again. Although there's quite a bit of variation. They've made the Ion Stone and the Companion um, that are like that more viable and pretty much evened them out. In fact, it looks like they may be a little more powerful. Of course, you giving up that little more powerful for you, just an edge, but you don't have the other guy fighting for you, and he doesn't help you with the idea of getting combat advantage. So again, there's that little tit for tat there, but you have to try to do it. Um, they give extra ratings for certain companions, give you certain ratings there that add back to you constantly versus it getting procced, but it ends up being the same, but it's constantly on you versus procking up. So a lot of people are liking that. And Enhanced Companion gives you additional bonus to combat advantage. This one gives combat advantage, defense, and power shared with the owner. And so Roosevelt here, I named that. He's a bullet pup, and so Bully. He ends up uh, being about the best game companion there are, but there are a few variations on a theme that you can use at this current point. Um, and so you see the points that he gives here. The equipment that I have in stock is I did get a Ring of the Companion 5 versus a 4, and of course that's Bold Ring of the Companion, so it gives you the armor pin and crit strike. And in doing so, I was able to uh, have enough armor pin to go past the point. Then I'd have more crit strike on this and combat advantage, and I'm just about this far over on my crit strike that I could take this off, but not quite. If I did, I would be like 67, 66, 8, and it would be just under. And then I have accuracy on here, which helps me boost my numbers up in the accuracy. So it really is geared towards a glass cannon and not so much covering for the defense. But then again, the other weapon set, and really that's the way I'm set for on this module here in combat advantage on the choke chain. There will be new ones coming out for companion wear, and this might change very easily, but this amount of combat advantage and accuracy that's on here is quite enticing. They would have to come out with something, just like this guy, crit combat advantage, but to have some different numbers onto it or something. Anyhow, so I have that going on. The bonuses, though, that I have going on right now for mobs and dungeon running is the Tiger. And whenever whenever I start attacking, he basically gives me 20% to your power and movement for 10 seconds when you enter combat. It basically gives me 6,000 extra power, so not 188, but 194. And then I have an extra 1,000 here, and here's my incoming healing bonus. Now this guy's only blue at this point. Whenever I get him to purple, it's 2,000 power, and I believe it's 4,000 power whenever I get him legendary. But he might be being replaced by somebody else. Mercenary here in my offensive slot. This was utility defense, and one of the only ones that you can get that have power for there. And another useful stat, incoming healing bonus. So I recommend that as being one that you could usually use with no problems. Mercenary here, which is just purple at this point. Whenever I get him purple, he will be 5,000 power, and I believe it's 2,500 combat advantage, so that goes up. I've just gotten the Baby Deep Crow up to legendary, and now he's at 6,000 constant power. And then we have the Minstrel, and this guy is just green at this point. But I'm fixing to have to, in the next mod, replace him out with somebody who gives hit points. The Energon gives it quite a bit, and so it looks like the Energon may go in there. That'll be my last to upgrade here. The next one upgrade is the Mercenary. And there's another questionability too, with this being an offensive power. One other guy that I have here, The Siege Master everybody likes because you're at will effects, but Staldorf gives you 6,000 combat advantage only at purple, and 10,000 whenever you do get him all the way up. And so people are looking at the idea, and tell me what you think down in the comments, of giving up 10,000 of that power now that I'm getting very close to 200k, for the fact of getting over 10,000, over 100,000 in my combat advantage. You know, you're not always getting combat advantage, so that comes into effect. So, having known that, again, we look at my stats, and we see I'm standing 188 power, and all my other effects are in that we looked at before. But whenever I go to attack, I'll just do one simple attack and then show you where my numbers are at, because it bumps up for quite a bit. So I've come in and slashed, and I'm at 201, 606. So I've gone over 200,000 power. It's lasting for a long time. Here we go, and then it goes down to 194, still boosted up, and now I'm back down to 188. That's quite a bit of time. It gives, 15 seconds for the full effect, but 10 seconds for the soul boost that goes on there. Now that can only happen once per minute, and the other one happens every time. So it still jumps up 6,000 each time, but then the other one with the gloves happens for only the minute, and then you have that. So having the 200,000 power is quite powerful. Okay, looking at my powers here, what I used to do was I would shoot long strider shot from way back here, and so I would be in range stance, and I would shoot a long strider shot and then run in fast while you still have the boost and start shooting. And you had to be, 15 foot away. They closened it a little bit, but you had to be about this far away. A long strider didn't work, and it was for an idea of being ranged and things, how you get a boost and you would be a booster, but you could boost yourself, and you did a twist. This one has a different twist to it. Right up here in the very top, the very green bar, the very first thing there that looks like a bow and arrow pointing up to the left, if you look, it has a little number 10, if you can see it in that. And whenever I switch stance, it starts over. Now it says 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a bonus that you get in damage, and it's very important that you use that correctly. But there's something else that can be done on the other side, and other than if you're being attacked, you can shoot back away from them and avoid very easily. But another effect is if you hit the what is my B button, this little hog down here, right there, you'll see it show up in the bar up above, bing, and you'll see there that bar show up, and it has a 5 on it, and this gives a defensive bonus. And now let's look at my stats real quick, and we'll find that my defense has gone up to 87,957, so it's given me 20,000 more defense over and above, and it does it to everybody in the group. And I always want to be somewhat of a team player, and this makes it happen. It helped in a lot of ways when we're fixing to take a lot of damage and stuff, like say second boss in the new LOM area, and all of that explosions is going on. You can switch it over and flick this. You're not having to attack so much. Maybe even whenever you do in the second round, whenever you have to go against the lightning golems and stuff, that you still would do that, because you're giving him a chance of keeping you healed up. But it takes off your damage bonus, right? And you can see it just now changed. So it lasts for 35 seconds, I believe, if I counted it out. And by then, it's ready to go again. And it does it for everyone around you. So you would do it way down a hallway at the end of the last one guys that you're fighting and going through a portal, and you'd switch and do it real quick and switch back and let it start counting, so it goes up to 10 again where it is right now, right? And this gives you an extra damage bonus. We'll look at that in our feats. and our powers and how they work together. And I know this is getting to be a lengthy video, but this is everything that has to go along with it in this build that's here. So let's look at our powers. Our at-will power, our constant go-to right here is penetrating arrows, which you just saw from a distance, but Storm Strike is the one up close, and it's the swish and the slash that you have, and it has 3 attacks, slash, slash, pow. The third one has the sparking attack, or lightning attack with it, and it tells you that it does half the damage on the third round extra to it, like a Lost Mouth hit. But I found that it only gives you about 1/3 of the number. And so they're going to have to look at that. It's not quite giving you the right amount. It's still, though, pretty much the best one to use for this because I am so face to face. The other slight trigger I might use is Split Strike. Split Strike has that jabbing attack, and it's what I used last mod, but now it's been changed. The first one I'm using is Marauder's Escape or Marauder's Rush, where it actually rushes to the guys in its fight. And if you look down here in the corner here, it shows you that it gives you 450 magnitude, and it also causes confusion. This delays everybody, gives everybody else a chance to run in and attack because it can happen from quite some distance, kind of like Longstriders used to. It does the same type of effect. My secondary weapon is Hindering Strike, and Hindering Strike is a swish around you. It can attack multiple characters in an arc around you, everywhere except for behind you. And so it's kind of important putting it in the right area, but it does incredible damage if you do it in that one area. Other than that, it's pretty much single target attack, though. It's picking out certain people. And then we have Board Charge. Board Charge also does the attack, but not from as long a distance as Marauders does. And it is 450 magnitude also. So in using that, I'm using the ones with the most powerful and getting the most effect out of them. And Board Charge, this is the opposite or melee of effect of the one that gives us the extra toughness that goes on here. There's a lot of variations here, though. They have Fox's Cunning and Fox's Shift, which Fox's Cunning gave us automatic miss, and you can also speed and slow people up by Fox's Shift as attack, and you're impenetrable whenever that happens, and you ping, ping, ping around. You can't do near as much damage with that build, but other things that can be utilized is Oak Skin, which actually heals yourself and stuff. And whenever we first went through this, there was a lot of things that were tried. Eventually, when we figured out which way to do it, we figured out what our strongest strengths were and went off of that. Call of the Storm is my daily that I use. It calls forth lightning. Whenever I also use a daily, my mount bonus here is if whenever I use a daily, that I get a shortness to my powers coming back, which helps me out. And so you pretty much try to do this in the middle of effect. You come in whenever it's larger mobs and pow, 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 and then call for a storm and then start giving hay. Another effect that you can use also is Forest Ghost still. It gives an extra magnitude also whenever you're fighting because it's 75 per hit of anybody 15 foot around you, and you're doing damage during that time too. So it's flip or flop, whichever one you use. Quite often I use this in just dungeon running and power, but get caught in a bad situation and I go the other way. Pardon me. So now we get down to class features, and there's a few different ones that work differently this time, and so it's caused things to be different. Whenever you get combat advantage, it's not just behind somebody. Of course, they could be somebody right in front of you, but quite often there'll be a piece of slice of pie on the sides instead of behind. But I keep this active, which is whenever I'm behind, I deal 10% more damage. You could use Crushing Roots where it lasts a little longer things, but I've already got something that works for that. Aspect of the Pact used to give everybody combat advantage automatically. Now they've marked it down, and if you read the tooltip, it only gives you 1,000 combat advantage per ally. So you could get 3,000 if you had three of your allies, the tank and two other DPS going in on the guy. But it tells you that if all group members are there, everybody gets 1,000. So in other words, somebody's going to have to stay range or you don't get it. But then it says maximum 5,000, which is so strange because there can only be 4 people, and if 4 get there, it only is 1. It would be 4,000 at maximum, but they tell you you don't get that 4,000 if it's all 4. It's only 1. So that's really not in effect. Aspect of the Serpent is whenever you switch stances, and using Trapper build, it used to be incredibly powerful. Storm Step action, whenever you activate a daily, if you add more dailies more often, it might come in effect because it reduces your cooldown, like I was talking about before. And so you could have another one of those effects, getting all your stuff back. She could go into the party instead of wasting 3 seconds of at wills between each encounter power. You could go encounter, pow, like you do for Call of the Storm, and it would bring things back even quicker. But that would only happen once, and you'd have to be saving up your daily for all of that. It could come into play someday. By thinking of that as being one thing that would happen one time, could be your way of helping a little extra. But I keep on Blade Storm, dealing melee damage, gain a 20% chance to deal an additional 10% attacks and damages around you. Twin Blade Storm, anytime you hit more than 2 enemies, deal an additional 8% damage. But quite often, you're not hitting more than 2 players here. It's more of a single player. In fact, only the one attack that we have up here, Hindering Strike, is doing more than one player, and therefore you can't call that to be any good. Aspect of the Wolf, gain deflect for each enemy that's around you, and again that could come into play maybe in the next mod or something somehow during a certain part of the dungeon and things. But at this point, this is the best choice, I believe, for at least this build, and for me. You might see it as different. Death strikes is whenever you use switching stances, but by using this, each second that I stay in melee stance, I get a 2.5% more damage boost, up to 25% more damage. So this is the reason that we basically stay in our melee stance, and because we're able to move in with our new form of long strider shot, it makes it effective. The other one that goes with this is using your ranged encounter powers makes your other ranged encounter powers cool down by 3 seconds. So they have long delays between each one of these, and you're supposed to at-will creatures to death. But if I use one, then it's 3 seconds quicker, i.e. 9 becomes 6 as it's turning to 5. And so I can use one, and 9 becomes to 5, 4, 3, and I use another one, and then boom, and that one's back too. And by getting a little bit of enhanced recharge speed, I can get it to where you can use and feed it off each other. But there's a way that you do the feeding, and I'll show you that here in a moment, to get max out of your attacks. One thing that makes that work is this. This is Blade Hurricane. Using melee encounters powers grants Flurry for 3 seconds. Flurry causes your melee and at-will attacks to deal double damage. So really it's just your at-wills do double damage. It was something that we had in a perk last time in our combat build. This is a form of that. Then we have Skirmisher's Gambit again. It's the where you give up crit for the chance of higher crit severity, 30% higher crit severity. And with you having this on, and you have a Vorpal on, which gives you crit severity, your crits hit much, much harder. And this puts you up into play with people that do a lot more damage, even by using this build, if you understand. Enhanced Conductivity, where it makes Call of the Storm do an additional weapon damage also, and so that makes it even stronger than it was before of your daily here, so it becomes very valuable. It only uses about half of it too. It only takes half to do it. So if you get it built up originally and go into a dungeon, you have the ability to use it, fight for a little while, and have it again. Although you'll have to fight back up over to 50 to use it again. So you really want to choose the times that you use your dailies, and I think that's really by consideration. So one more thing of many is I basically pick power all the way through here on your powers, but I was I'm real confused on whether to take and try to make my lowest stats up, which is what I just recently rebuild and did, or just go for hit points. I'm liable to just go for hit points, but at this point I'm trying to get my critical avoidance, certain things, defense, awareness, a little bit higher, and try to make him well rounded. And then I damage versus cultists, because that's who we're fighting. In here, I had 2 extra points now that I have total for all the boons that we have, and I put them into defense rather than make it damage versus demons. We don't fight them as much anymore, and when we do, it's okay to not have it. I use running speed here. I used combat advantage here, of course, but then I chose awareness over something like dinosaurs, where we don't fight the dinosaurs so much, and then companion influence, which is extremely important, and I'm going for a max boost out of it, so that has to go in effect. Along with power in this one, I chose my deflect over having something like just regular hit points. And though we do fight some undead here recently, in the last campaign did, so I held on to that as it is. In the next tier, where you can only choose 2, for a while I had on increased stamina, because I have a perk that I do 3% even more damage if my stamina is above 75%. I've been playing around with that, but to try to get my call of lightning, call of the power, this has action point gain and then my recharge speed. And this is where I'm getting that. It's one of the only places you can get it anymore. Important here, a lot of people chose the first one, and it sounds good. It does a lot of damage for if you're doing little groups and things, but it's a chance on to kill, and if you're doing a boss, it doesn't have it. So you could really put this on in mobs, but this is the best one I find in bosses. Decreases target's awareness, do an additional attack to 120% of your weapon damage, plus 10% per rank, and increase the action point gain here. And if I'm trying to get that Call of Storm back, there's a few others that you could use like this, but some of these you have to really see. It sounds great until you realize it stays at the top when your health is below 30%. So you have to get screwed over before there's this chance that this will even happen. It doesn't sound too good at all. So there's my companions and things. And so what we're looking at here is different modes of attack. And you can see that my buttons down at the bottom here, my X is still active. If I have to go away pretty far here, and it'll drop off. Wow. So here, anywhere closer than that to the dummies or the attacker, I can still attack. So if I'm running in, what I basically do is I go through my attacks as X, Y, B. Quite often it changes. It depends on if I'm against 1 or 2 or so on, because my B attack can knock somebody down and prone them for a few seconds, and then we can attack. So if there's one major guy to take out, I go for that over the others. But in general, here's the way the attack goes. It runs in attacking, swishing, and then you get 3 attacks on your B, on your at wills B, and then you would use your B at that point. Sorry. This is your knockdown that's on there, and for 3 seconds you'd be able to do at wills again. After 1, 2, 3, it's pretty much over. If you get too quick at doing it, it doesn't perk the next time, and in not perking, you end up not getting your bonus off the hit, and your next 3 at wills aren't getting it. Now, I've got blade storms to where it sets up to where just at any melee attack does it. So with any melee attack, blade storm activates automatically to do my 3, So this helps me in the fact that I don't have to watch every exact single one, but if I get in 4, my Blade Storm will kick off of that. My Fury kicks off of that, and it doesn't have to do it off of encounter powers. Now, whenever I come in and I hit first, I'm generally going to hit. If I hit at this point here with 2 people, I'm going to end up doing my blades, my secondary attack, swish to get both of them at one time. And generally, I'm going to go behind them rapidly and hit B on this guy and get him just about knocked down. And then he would be done, and then turn back towards him, fighting him until my big attack comes back again. But there's a lot of scenarios, and I don't want to go into each one, but let's just look at this as a coming in first, and we know there's going to be people up around this corner. So I hit my hog, if you will. I hit my boar charge to make everything tougher. My numbers start to go up as I switch stance. 1, 2, 3. So we're getting closer. And as I'm getting closer, they peg. I fire in, caught between both of them. Boom, pow. Now that time it did more damage to him, directly attacked to him. And so after the secondary attack, I felt like he was going to wrap and die. And I went ahead and attacked him with a major shot because it was more than he could take. He would have been dead easily by it, or one more swing. Instead of wasting the time on the swing, I went in and attacked and came back. This is a strategy I'd have easily in a dungeon because somebody's doing some damage somewhere, and in that effect, that little amount that was left on his body is going to be gone, and I'm going to waste boom on that he has left. I go on for another target. I quite often will be fighting, and there'll be a bigger target that's over here fighting, and if I see a red spot, I can shush to try to get out of it, but while trying desperately now to keep my stamina full, I will turn around and be fighting him, and then see this guy over here and shoot over here and fight him and these guys, and the red spot goes away, and now I come back and fight this guy, bam, and so on. But your general attack is going to be to come in with your marauders. 1, 2, 3 slash 1, 2, 3 pow. 1, 2, 3 slash 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's your long term. That's where everything is working because your at-wills are getting that double for just the amount of time that you're using your at-wills. Then you're using the encounter again, which is perking it again, which is using it again and perking it again. Quite often when you get built up like this, you don't have to take as many of the shots, and you might come in and slash 1, 2, 3 and take that guy out there. This guy's almost done, so you get rid of this guy. It's only one more shot on him. Somebody's hitting somebody somewhere. This guy's over here fighting him. So while I was fighting these and I was going around doing all that, I look over and I go, okay, let me get that guy there. Boom, slash and come back. So there's a few combinations you can get, but what you don't want to do, if you use up all your powers very quickly, then you're at-willing for quite some time, and it can get you in a lot of danger. Everybody thinks, pow, 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 so you come in and say, pow, slash, and boom, and now I'm at-willing for at least 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, I'm not getting anything out of that. Well, what I've done in this build is built it to where Blade Storm will even work off of this. You can see it kick, and all I'm doing is my at-will, and it says Blade Storm, and it keeps recharging. In doing so, if I make the mistake, it still Blade Storms. And so if you kept up with it exactly, you could probably get some more damage out of it. But with everything going on, I find this to be a more open type of way to do it. Anyhow, I can't think of much more to talk about and finish things off, but when we look at the mount bonuses, you can see there's a few that we've um, really lost any boom that we used to get out of it at all. But what I have kept is Cavalry's Warning and Gladiator's Guile. I have Combatant's Maneuver, so after controlling an enemy, gain combat advantage damage. So I get auto combat advantage in off my swish because it wraps them with roots. Artificer's Persuasion. When you use an artifact, reduce my cooldowns. So there's that thing whenever I use an artifact, how it gives me my numbers back. So I can come in, boom, boom, and then throw my Call of the Storm, and it'll reduce my cooldowns. Call of the Storm does in the first place, so it can try to give me come back. I can only do that once for every so often, though, so you have to save it right. And then Shepherd's Devotion is a group buff. Whenever you use a daily power, your teammates are buffed also. So these are basically whenever I'm using artifacts and dailies, so it's not constant like they used to be. And each one of these insignias here are all dominance, except for these top have the eye in the middle of that one, which is blue still, so it's not finished off, and then the crescent and the eye of the top one are courage and mastery. Neither one has the ability to change to dominance, so in keeping Cavalry's Warning and Gladiator's Guile, I can't get them to be any more damage or any more of the power to be added to it, but that's just fine. And insignia bonuses, and I run Dominant Force. I only have a 5,000 power mount rather than a 10,000 legendary in that. Piercing Screech, because I do have a legendary Griffin, and so in that it cuts off 30% of the damage for the next 6 seconds. It's going to become real valuable in this next mod whenever he does certain attacks. And so kind of a pre-setup for that, but it's also great to use at the same time. And I never got a tensors or anything, so that's the next best thing. And this mod is just being able to debuff him like crazy. If you do it the right moment, it can be quite different. So hopefully this helps y'all out and gives you another look at one way of doing this. You could use this same build to do archery. You would build it differently on it, but you would still do the same thing with your 10 building up in the top hand bar and try to stay more archery set. You would no longer use these powers though, and you would use other ones, and then you would start using your at will. But one other thing I like about this build here, this at will, they give you the ability to move and shoot, and while it doesn't do much damage, what's neat about it is it goes through. So if you look, both of those two are getting shot. If you could line it up a little more, all three of them will get shot. And so it goes through multiple targets. So that's kind of neat. But we're not built on that line. We're built on coming in, attacking, swish, swish, attack, bam. And one thing with this build, we try not to dodge as much as we can. You can get one dodge in every once in a while. If you do two, you go below 75%. If you look at the little bar that's right down here, the green that's building back up on it. And so to keep that extra damage, where that is, by the way, it's in your gear. And I have the better shirt, but this is probably the better shirt, even though the number is lower, because when my stamina is 75% or over, your damage is increased by 3%. And so I've been using that and trying to really not use as much stamina as possible. Trousers also I never did show, and that's whenever you critically strike with your powers, you gain a 10% chance to gain 25 action points. It's just the best pants in the game right now that's there. There's another one that if you have 75%, you do get 3% less damage done to you. But hey, I'm a glass cannon kind of thing, and so that basically is it. Again, the only other addition here to this effect are these two other artifacts that I could be using. One for my damage exclusively, and in dungeons is exclusively, pretty much, but could be used in either way. Is the wyvern venom, a coated knives, and that gives you quite a bonus. So hopefully this is helps somebody out, and if they have any trouble with a ranger build, this can give them some type of pointer. And you can see those roots are attached for that long. You're getting extra damage during that time for each one of those that get done. Someone questioned, well, do I finish off these littler ones here, and this one didn't really get hit, do I go around and hit him? Well, what depends. If you have people fighting with you, I walk off and I go on, because my next boom that I have, if it's already ready, does 186,000 if it crits. This guy only has 20,000 left, and it's going to give me 20,000 for that damage. 20,000. There's 32 right there on the first hit of that. So, do you, after you switch, do you switch and then come over and attack this guy, and then go back and finish off this guy? Do you switch and change? Do you, if you followed the way that that looked? Anyhow, guys, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll make some more videos that clarify more points. Maybe do some more build videos on different aspects of different types of hunters, but also some of the people that I have built up. I have 4 characters that I'm leading through this campaign here, and 3 of which are extremely viable, I believe, even in the newest dungeon. So might be worth having the builds for those 2. Peace.